All right, I'm here today with Alisdair and Alex again because yesterday the players pack for our tournament was released and had a few surprises. So surprising, I've actually shared the screen straight to the surprise. For those who've been paying attention to the channel for a little bit now, we talked a lot about the 1500 point tournament we all met and played at. I met Alex and Alisdair at. They've met a long time ago. And the first the 1500 point tournament was going to be the same when they wanted to put in place another one. It looked like it was just going to be the same thing, but there've been a few surprises, and we're here just to talk about that and I guess get the hot takes for what to expect on November 9th, I think it is. But yeah, I thought we could go around, Alistair, and how surprised were you out of 10 with what the pack entailed?
Um, I'd probably say maybe a six with the mission changes, but then this interesting twist that they've put in with rank bonus being the deciding factor for scoring additional battle points. I think that ratcheted up to about probably an eight or a nine. Really interesting decision, and I suppose we'll talk about it in a little bit, but definitely was a little bit of shock value to go, oh, we're driving in this particular direction now. So yeah, probably about an eight.
What did you think, Alex?
Love it.
Shocked?
Love it.
Marvelous.
Love it.
Six?
Love it. Well,
Wow.
I just love the that the guys have just decided that, you know what, next tournament in, we're just going to give it something different to go. And it's not like we left the last tournament with everyone going, oh my gosh, the scoring was trash, and we're going to try something different. We're all happy to play the same thing, but credit to Michael and the team to come back and say, look, there's complaints about infantry. Let's, not performing very well. Let's try and fix that in a way that we can. But it's not the only change. I love that we're moving to the 17-3 scoring system. Different missions in this one. I'm hyped, so I'll give it a 9 out of 10.
9.
Including the hype factor.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I was probably an 8. I think so. I've got on the screen that game 1 last time was command and control. It's still command and control, but we didn't have battle points in the last tournament. We're now looking at 3 battle points for controlling that feature. I'm not sure if you guys picked that up, but we're all playing this map with the forest in the middle.
Yes.
That's very. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot.
We talked a bit about this earlier in terms of having that feature suddenly be replaced by something that's traversable and something that's going to mean that positioning is going to be really different. I suppose, in the last tournament in the command and control, it really divided the battlefield in terms of where you were going to position your units, what sort of attack you were going to make. And now you've got it's a forest, and it doesn't appear to be any sort of special forest. It's a piece of terrain that you can move into, that you can fight within, that you can really, really sort of try and wrest from one another. And you can sort of see, there's a little bit of the agenda here when it comes to the additional battle points being gained by being claimable by a unit with a rank bonus, and it's the highest rank bonus that's going to claim it. So they want infantry blocks fighting over this forest. And I love it as a bit of a change. I think it's going to make people maybe decide to bring slight variations on what they were doing in order to try and claim those additional battle points, given that the battle points are so valuable in this new structure.
Do you think they're valuable, Alex?
Yeah, I just want to have one comment on the map too, because in the first tournament, when I faced John, the winner, having that central impassable piece, which was on the first map, absolutely wrecked my army because he was able to split my Dragon Ogre units, whereas this time there's no such feature. So who knows? Maybe I'll play John again in the first round. It'll be a rematch on that. But yeah, look, the battle points are a good change. I think it gives a bit more fairness to people when they're playing, and the ability to think about the end game a bit more and think, okay, well, it's not just about a straight loss win. I mean, well, it is at the end of the day, but let's try and score battle points by preserving units rather than just saying, well, I've lost, and I'm going to keep going. So definitely pro that change.
Yeah, I benefited a lot from the impassable terrain in the first game, and I've played a game on this map, and it feels very open. Being able to charge through it rather than having to go around it is a big issue. So,
Or if you're Paddy, just bring another wood and just put it down as a wood off player.
That's right. It's who knows? Like how many? I mean, there could now be 8 wood elf players coming. We know that we've already got one extra, which is going to be insufferable enough. But we'll see. There could be more people.
Your brother Paddy, we should clarify. We know is bringing wood elves.
Only the other Paddy,
of the I think, was maybe implying that she has Tomb Kings. Potentially, who knows?
We'll see.
We'll see. But I suppose you guys have some opinions on the second game changing. So that last time was Breakpoint. And I remember speaking to the organizers and they weren't particularly enamored with Breakpoint to begin with. And there are a few qualifiers made about it. So it was watered down. But meeting engagement's usually very different in the rules. And this is, something else, I suppose. It still has the infantry emphasis, but it's not as significant. But 12 inches apart, it is a little bit different.
It's not a long way, right? And again, I suppose going back to the idea being, we want to see more infantry, we want to see more, I suppose, line on line combat. This is a mission designed for that. 12 inches, it's not a huge amount, but it's a lot closer for infantry units than your standard 24. So it's going to mean plenty of turn 1 charges if positioning is going in a particular way. The thing that I like about this in terms of having it as a map is that it's supposed to be rewarding you for positioning and maneuverability rather than just, lining yourself up with the extra battle points for claiming table quarters. The thing I don't like about it is the map with the positioning of the buildings on the flanks, because it feels like that's a limitation in terms of presenting, I want to roll up this particular flank. If I want to try and do that with a standard list, without vanguard moves or without scouts or reinforcements, I'm going to have to take a long time to try and roll around the outside of your army if I can get there at all. So I'm a bit mixed feelings about this one.
What do you think, Alex?
I think that's a very interesting point that I hadn't actually thought of when I first looked at this. I guess the counter argument would be if you've just got units bunkering there, they're not doing anything else, but that probably favors like goblin players. They can just smash down a 40-point unit and not care that it's sitting there anyway. Whereas for Warriors of Chaos players, anything's expensive. So we're not going to be able to do that. But yeah, it's definitely a big change moving to that 12 inches apart. It immediately makes me think about the new Wolves of the Sea mechanic about trying to control who goes first. The Warriors challenge and building into that. Would you do that for this one specific mission? Maybe. Got to weigh up those pros and cons, but being able to effectively at least even force your opponent to think about it, right? And say, look, I might challenge you, and even that thought may not make them deploy as forward as they may think. So if they're staring down some pretty big beasts on the other side, that can have a psychological effect to saying, okay, well, now I'm actually going to control a bit more of the board before we've even started the game on there. So, but otherwise, I think the interesting point is that it's per quarter, which again is great, encouraging the infantry there. I don't think any of the armies last time had 4 infantry units. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Not ranked. Not
ranked. Yes. Well, sorry. I mean, it's must have a rank bonus. So, okay, there could be some light cav units flying around. Does a Bretonnian lance formation get a rank bonus? Does that count?
It does.
I don't actually know.
+1, but I don't know if it's got a rank per se. Technically, I guess
Interesting
that's one of the
question.
questions we can put
Interesting
in the
question.
chat because there's a
Yeah.
Britannian player.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that immediately is what I think of, right? Like you keep your peasant bowman back. That's a table quarter, a couple of units of that. You're done. Your knights charging forward. If it counts, I'm sure we'll get corrected. Or we'll look after this.
So you guys played in 8th edition. When I was playing a long time ago, and I still haven't figured out whether it was 4th or 5th, but table quarters were just baked into the victory points, and you tended to just split them in the end. Like you'd have 2 each, or there'd be some sort of massacre where it didn't matter. And that's sort of one of the perceptions I have of it, that is this just win more in the end with battle points? Like if you're getting, I find at 1,500 points, you've got so much space, which admittedly, Alisdair, it's a good point on that map. You don't have as much. It's a bit squishy having to navigate the forest and the extreme, the buildings that are in the deployment zones, but at opposite diagonals. So yeah, I'm interested whether you think we can talk like open battle. We'll just slide down the 2 centimeters to show us exactly just with no caveats, open battle.
Yeah.
But does any of this change your plans for the list that you were planning on bringing, and or just your expectations for the event in general?
We were laughing. If it's not clear, Alex and I started chatting about this very quickly after the players pack was released. But we were laughing about this with all of the, the rubbish talk back and forth about dragons and such. And the feeling immediately, when we had this discussion was, hey, that Black Guard unit, Alisdair, that you took last time might actually be really good this time. And we had a little bit of a back and forth over that, but that, I suppose, goes into the other discussion, or the other point that begs discussion here, is whether or not this realistically changes the way that the games are or should be played. Ultimately, it's my feeling that there's the potential, for some armies to really take advantage of this and not be impacted in the play styles that we've seen previously, not be impacted in terms of having to give up toughness or maneuverability, things that we've sort of talked about. But for the most part, I think for more expensive armies, I mean, I'm biased towards elves, obviously, but for more expensive armies, you can't take a 40-point block of 20 goblins to sit in that quarter and hold that quarter because they have 3 ranks on anything that sort of comes in them. If I want to buy 15 spearmen, it's going to cost me at least 150 points. So that's a big impact. That's 10% of my list at 1,500. It's a big impact in the way that I play. And, in the zero-sum game of I'm bringing an army in order to frustrate and then destroy your army, it might not make any difference at all at the end of the day in terms of the lists that we've really been considering. So I will be interested to see how many other people sort of give feedback on the day about the way that they've approached list building. For us, I don't know. It's opened a door to thinking about it, certainly. Whether or not it's changed my mind about the sorts of things that I'll bring, I don't know.
It definitely favors, the ranked up units. I don't necessarily have an issue with that, perhaps, except for the undead, in which case that where they can bring back the ranks that you've had to go. But ultimately, if you're still 17-3 destroying your opponent, it's not going to make a large difference, is it? And as you said, even in that second mission, it's going to be very rare that someone scores for all 4 points. That's on there. Now, is it going to change anything for me? I mean, ironically, again, the one unit I would have dropped out of my previous list were my ranked up Marauders, which did nothing the last event except for dying. I don't know. It's really interesting because immediately you start thinking about, oh gosh, if I did want to go Wolves of the Sea, I've got Marauder Berserkers, which can be ranked up, and you can throw units of them into ranks, even though they do have skirmish, they do have open order as a choice. Now, that's something that could happen. Would I do it? Maybe. We have to see. Or do I just, as Alice is implying, just go all out, just go for the win at all costs? But, I do think that if someone wants to bring a more thematic list, yeah, they should be able to go and sit on there. But, we've been having this conversation with our great friend Chris, who is likely the one that's hurt the most in these changes with ogres.
Yeah.
Because it's basically said you have to bring Noblars if you want to score the points.
Yeah.
I mean, in saying that, you can bring ranked up ogres, but it's unlikely that people are going to want to do that. And there's a great debate going on about the validity of 20 Noblars, 30 Noblars for 40 to 60 points sitting around, and just marching it up, wrapping it with ogres. There's merit there in some ways. Sure, they can try and kill the Noblars, but I think ogres run BSBs in most lists anyway, so the Noblars aren't going to be running immediately. I mean, if anything touches them, they probably are. But the argument is that a couple of those cheap units, if they're burning fireballs, spells, trying to get the 40-point Noblar unit off the objective, what are your Iron Guts doing going into that? And goes for, Orcs come to mind as well. Probably it might encourage more Night Goblins with Fanatics too, like march up, plonk them down, and just send out the Fanatics, which I don't think we saw. I don't recall if Dave had many. I think
he didn't have the super amount of them, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the flip side of that is that it also seems to potentially reward a tar pit. So if you're able to build something big, strong, tough that can just sit there and weather, then you're going to see the success, particularly given that it's a forest. So dwarves in this case feel appropriate. So big unit of hammerers, something that's intended, even before changes to this edition, those units were intended to take charge, and so they've retained a lot of their benefits and their bonuses when it's sort of carried over in editions. So if you can build something like that, then certainly the first mission you're probably going to see that reward come back, because if you can't be shifted, then it doesn't necessarily make that much of a difference. But then I suppose that bears consideration for the other two missions. And the second mission, again, for the combat dwarf armies that we saw last time, the second mission is milk and honey to those players to go, you've just reduced the amount of time that I have to spend traversing the field, being exposed, being vulnerable to all the things that can hurt me as a dwarf that I don't necessarily have access to, magic. And now I don't have to worry about that, and I can put my combat stuff, my big tough combat stuff, right in your face really quickly. Yeah, it's interesting, and I suppose I do, as Alex said, I love the fact that these guys are trying something different and changing the way that the pack is built, and the rules sort of around that is a really, really lovely way to do that. Unfortunately, my brain immediately goes to what gets the most value out of it and what doesn't. And that's just the way that I look at these sorts of things. But I suppose it will just be interesting to see really how this shapes up, particularly if we have the same mix of races where dwarves were one of the most represented races at the last tournament. And it'll just be really interesting to see sort of how it shapes up.
Alex, what are your views?
I played so Scott is coming again, and I don't think it sounds like from the chat, Scott, that you're taking dwarves again, but in that first game last time, he had a massive unit of hammers with a king that I couldn't kill in it, really, and was a threat with the D6 wounds rune on a great weapon. And so I'm not sure the first one's really that different. Like, you get 300 points anyway. What happened in that game was that I was able to knock out War Machines, Iron Drakes early, which meant his king sort of did a long charge, what I thought was a long charge, but statistically probably isn't, to tell you the truth, and was well worth it. Got some action. I was lucky enough to escape. The Carnosaur escaped, and I sort of just won based on running away at the end. And I, like you say, fireballed the unit of dwarves so that it couldn't get back to the objective. But I think Scott sort of thought in the aftermath, oh, maybe he should have just gone straight at it, which is what I was expecting. So I think you got 300 points if you won that or had that objective. So whether that, how different that is from 3 battle points, I'm not sure. I guess now you have to have a rank bonus, and then it might have just been unit strength 5, which was a big deal for me because I didn't really have much of a rank bonus. I couldn't really get a rank bonus at all. I had the Saurus. I could hang. I guess that's all they were good for, but they weren't going to make it by themselves. So yeah, I'm not sure. The first one, I think it'll be interesting to see whether people distort their list to take more infantry. I'm sort of thinking I was probably bringing something that had no ranks one way or the other. And I think it's probably good that people who have armies that had ranks have more of a use for them, because I do think infantry is generally at a disadvantage, and maybe that's for another pod to go into more detail, because I think the game has sort of moved on somewhat from infantry. But certainly the second mission, I think, is more complicated than I thought from what we've discussed today. So,
you know, that infantry seems to be a hot topic at the moment on every podcast. You know, Squarebase did it. Old World Fanatics were talking about it too. You know, the relevancy of infantry and what they would change. But let's all speak for Paddy, your brother Paddy, because I know he's off on holidays at the moment. He's got wood elves, who loves the skirmishes. He can plonk down another wood. Is he going to even look at Eternal Guard or anything like that? Or is he going to go, nah, I'm going to bring as much long range firepower as I can bring and take down your ranks?
I guess the question for him is that's the question for everybody. That, do you change? Like, he hasn't played Eternal Guard in any of the games we've played. I don't think he wants to, but does he think he has to now?
I don't think so. I think he'll go the firepower.
Yeah, well, that's it, and I think that's because that's the temptation. I have the same sort of thing. Like, I'll probably play High Elves, I'll probably play Sisters of Avalon, and I'm like, well, I guess at the end, if I can just reform into Open Order if they survive, which is the plan, and that's about as far as I'm willing to take. I'm not, I better take Spearmen, but that's probably the furthest thing from my mind at the moment. So it will be interesting to see whether there are a lot of units. Like, if you looked around, and it looks like it's still going to be pretty diverse from what on Best Coast, like, we've all sort of said what we're playing, and it seems mostly the same races. So yeah, there was a lot of infantry last time hanging around, and I guess those players have something else to fight for.
I think an interesting concept I've been thinking about a lot is magic resistance on infantry blocks, right? Like, dwarves get it normally, but here I think if I'm bringing Chaos Warriors for once, God forbid, I'm definitely putting a bracing collar on any infantry unit I can for that magic resistance -2, because you can just see it now, right? You're like, you're not dwarfs, you're rolling around and you're just getting fireballed constantly to bring down that rank bonus. So I wonder if there's those subtle changes that might happen just in the game and have these effects around the efficiency of what I think was the dominating factor of last tournament were magic missile spammy characters. I mean, look, I'm guilty of that. I ran one. Eric, who has Demon Prince, I think had 4 magic missiles on it. I'm sure there were others in the event firing at magic missiles. So, sorry, Alisdair was the king of that. Yeah.
I suppose it's interesting you say that, because it was the thing that I went into. Like, if you're spending the points on a unit that you want to try and, you know, get there and achieve value, then you're likely to spend, if you can, 40 points on Obsidian Lodestones to make sure that it has magic resist too. Like, that's such a powerful deterrent against people with ruby rings, or against anyone who's running that sort of battle magic missile style approach. It again, I suppose it just comes down to, we know what's popular, we know what's efficient, and we know what's consistent. Are we going to realistically expect people to not bring those options when everyone knows what they are, and everyone knows sort of the what again to sort of expect from them? So the magic missile sorcerer is a perfect one, but other things, flying cavalry, mounted characters, all of those sorts of things. Is any of this going to make enough of a difference to change people's minds around the way that they're going to approach it, knowing all of those things? And I'm not sure it is.
That's the $1 million question. I mean, it's great that there is a question, I suppose. I was more thinking like, how far should I push this for this one rather than the other way around? And just to confirm, Alisdair, you had 2 lodestones on your unit last time?
The black guy,
yeah.
So the champion take 50 points of magic items, so he had 2 obsidian lodestones on him.
Yeah. And so did you find, who did you play did any of the guys you played have a lot of magic missiles against you as well?
So first game was dwarves with Josh, and so no, nothing. Second game was against Paddy, and that was over realistically before the magic missiles came to bear on the unit. But that was a list that had magic missiles, and I felt very comfortable exposing the Blackguard to that because of the magic resistance. And then the final, I think Keith didn't have really any magic missiles to speak of either. So I suppose in my groupings there was only one of those particular characters that would behave in that way. But I think the majority of lists that could take a magic caster had that sorcerer. And so hedging bets, I definitely think its value as a deterrent is worth 40 points if you can squeeze it in.
Even just a single one. I mean, in my game against Josh, where I was spamming the spells, the Ruby Ring I failed, I believe, 3 times, even with his magic resist 1.
Yeah, magic resist 1 has a huge impact on level 2s. And I speak from obviously that experience playing against Josh with 2 level 2s that were intended to be throwing, magic missiles around all the time. It had a huge impact on their consistency. They go from, more often than not getting the cast off to, I think I got in 6 turns, maybe 3 magic missiles off two sorceresses casting every turn. So makes a huge difference.
Yeah, look, I've been impressed. Magic Resistance 2 is extraordinary. I had to sort of be aggressive against Eric because he had Brazen Collar on his Demon Prince, which sort of trumped.
Yep.
If we wanted to get into a Fireball war, I was going to lose. I played Dwarfs the other 2 games, and obviously Magic Resistance won there, but fortunately, Pillar and Arcane Urgency aren't affected by that. It's just the Fireballs and the Ruby Ring. So you're going to throw them and see what happens, and I probably got luckier than lucky as I needed to be that I was getting enough of them off. But I find with Dwarfs in general, it's sort of like, it's good they've got it, but you can do all the other stuff. It is interesting, if this is the way it's going to go. It's something I'd sort of lean towards already. I definitely think 2 lodestones for 40 points is a pretty good deal, and especially being able to protect the whole unit. I wonder if that's what will happen, is instead of some of us imagining from this that, people have in their heads this idea about Warhammer being 3 to 5 blocks of infantry, but instead it'll just be 1 giant unit.
Yeah, look, Death Stars are a precedent, and there is. I don't really think there are an enormous amount of them this time around, because magic enhancement is nowhere near as powerful as it used to be. But at the same time, Death Stars, combo characters, all the things where you used to roll around. I mean, I did it myself, to be quite honest. I had a unit of 30 witches that had a Death Hag on a Cauldron of Blood that sat right in the middle, and they'd make mincemeat of anything. Like they would, it was disgusting, but it's a precedent, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw it return. The only issue that I foresee is, again, all of the other problems that we have with big mounted characters, those sorts of things that if they can get in your rear or your side, don't necessarily care how beefy or
Mm.
powerful you are in most instances.
I think the Death Star might change from a combat one to potentially. I immediately think of Tomb Kings and going like 30 skeleton archers. I don't know. I don't know if there's a max unit size, but yeah, 1,500 points, like 30 skeleton archers just sitting in the middle of the board, peppering shots.
Yeah.
And reducing armor saves, using magic, and making that really efficient way. And just saying, sure, like, okay, charge me. I'm going to res X amount of units back per turn. And you're just going to have to churn through this whilst the Tomb Scorpions and the Necrosphinxes are smashing the rest of your army apart, which you're going to need to commit a dragon level power source to take out that unit, or just give up the 3 battle points in this specific case in those ones. So, I mean, the other one I immediately think of for myself is like mercenary Ungors. The surprisingly cheap
Cheap.
unit.
I was gonna say wrap it up with your hottest take. That is
Well, this is a super hot take, Alex. Super hot take that I've been flirting with, which is, units are Ungors. They're dirt cheap. They've got Mark of Undivided, which I actually missed in the first pass.
Yeah.
They're not reliable, right? But they're so cheap. And
I mean, style ambushed. Points, this is off the charts.
Yeah, well, that in Wolves of the Sea. I'm talking about Wolves of the Sea specifically, where they can be brought in. But, they can shoot. And again, it comes back to that if I want to score these battle points, maybe that's a way of doing it. I'm just trying not to go immediately to the, all right, bugger it, get a dragon. Or 2.
Yeah. That's where I've been up till now. So maybe that's, to wrap it up, that's probably the best take for me. Like, I love 1,500 points because there's hard questions, but I was probably at the point of, can I get away with taking a dragon? And this has probably opened that up again. Only for cultural reasons. I'm like, I know the best list for high elves involves a dragon, and there's ways to squeeze it in at 1,500, but this is probably a little bit better. That, okay, if I'm going to do that, I will have 0 ranks. If I lose it, I'm going to lose massively. And I don't mean just dying. I mean, I just might not be able to run around and stop everything. That particularly in that second mission, to try to counter it, because everything else will be so thin. So we've got a couple of minutes left. What do you think overall? It's come out. Everyone's revving up. What would you say the takeaways are for everybody who's playing?
I suppose for me specifically, I just love the ambition. I love the fact that they've taken the chance to try and shape the way that they sort of want to see games be played, try and address some of the feedback that the community is just so hot on at the moment. For other people, I suppose I just say, check whether the value is there, whether it's worth making the decision to make the change to try and accommodate the new framework. Personally, I'm going to try maybe and get the best of both worlds. I had a little bit of a change to my list not long ago that I think is beneficial to this sort of framework, and I'm feeling a bit more positive about that. I am going to see whether I can get the best of both worlds in terms of maybe a dragon, maybe some ranked, but we'll just have to see. It bears a couple of games before now in November to see whether that's going to work.
You get the final word, Alex. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, I keep joking about Ungors and things like that, but ultimately it comes down to, or just take 3 Dragon Ogres. I don't know. I don't know. It's on there. The change is going to be there. I really hope that it does encourage a bit more infantry into the game. Look, selfishly, it's probably going to benefit me if people do that as a Warriors of Chaos player. But generally speaking, again, I'd be happy to come to the event, come dead last and win that wooden spoon, which they've added in. If you hammer notice, they've got the wooden hammer now.
Is that in
if you scroll down? And just for once, face off against some ranked up units, which aren't elves, Alex.
Don't worry, I won't have any ranked elves. All right. Well, look, It'll be great. We'll get this up on the chat. Thanks for listening. Anybody who's watching the channel, we're happy to hear what you think. It's an unusual format, 1,500 points to a lot of people, but I think it was already pretty good. And yeah, we'll see what you think. A lot of people have opinions about infantry. They're flying around the internet at the moment. John and the team have put their money where their mouth is. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for coming on, Alisdair and Alex.
Thanks for having us.
See you later.